At Holy Cross Hospital in Houston, 3 middle-aged men died under mysterious circumstances in 2 months, all during the night shift, all in the cardiology ward. The morning sun in Texas was barely breaking through the heavy clouds when Detective Kurt Sanders received a call. On October 27th, at 7:20 a.m., the body of 47-year-old Robert Hill was found at Holy Cross Hospital. 3 deaths in 2 months in the same ward, too many to be a coincidence. Sanders parked his patrol car near the main entrance of the hospital and headed for the elevators. His partner, Detective Christina Collins, was already waiting on the 4th floor in the cardiology department. Collins was studying her notebook when Sanders approached her. "What do we have?" he asked, adjusting his tie. Robert Hill, 47 years old, admitted the day before yesterday with suspected angina. Condition stable, prognosis favorable. Died today at 4:30 a.m. The nurse on duty found him showing no signs of life during her routine rounds. Collins turned the page. And that's the 3rd case in 2 months. They walked down a long corridor, past wards filled with the muffled voices of patients and the soft hum of medical equipment. Ward 412 was at the far end of the department. Robert Hill's body still lay on the hospital bed, covered with a white sheet. Standing nearby was Dr. Elijah Freeman, head of the cardiology department. Dr. Freeman was a tall, 51-year-old man with graying temples and tired eyes. He had worked at this hospital for 23 years and had never encountered such a series of deaths. "Dr. Freeman," Sanders introduced himself, showing his ID. "Tell us about Mr. Hill's condition." Robert was admitted on October 25th with complaints of chest pain. The examination showed mild angina, nothing critical. We prescribed standard therapy, nitroglycerin, beta blockers. His condition was stable, and we planned to discharge him tomorrow. Freeman took off his glasses and wiped them. "I don't understand what could have happened." Collins wrote down every word. "Who was on duty that night?" "Samantha Butler, our head nurse. She's been here for 8 years, a very reliable employee. And David Carter, a junior nurse." "We'd like to talk to them," Sanders said. 10 minutes later, Samantha Butler appeared in the doctor's office. She was a 34-year-old woman of average height, with her hair neatly pulled back in a bun and tired eyes. She was wearing an immaculately clean blue medical uniform. She sat on the edge of a chair, her hands folded in her lap. "Miss Butler, tell us about last night," Collins asked gently. "I started my shift at 11 p.m. on the 26th. I did my standard rounds, checked on all the patients. Mr. Hill was asleep. His vitals were normal." Samantha spoke in an even, professional tone. "At 2 in the morning, I checked on all the patients again. Hill was awake, complaining of slight nausea. I gave him an anti-nausea medication as prescribed by the doctor. And then? The next rounds were at 4 in the morning. That's when I discovered—" Samantha faltered. "He wasn't responding to my questions. I checked his pulse, his breathing. Nothing. I immediately called the doctor on duty, but it was too late." Sanders watched her reaction. Samantha looked genuinely upset, but she remained professional. "Miss Butler, over the past 2 months, 3 men of approximately the same age have died in your ward. Did you notice anything unusual?" Samantha frowned. "I've been thinking about that. James Ryder in August, Anthony Brooks in September, now Robert Hill. All 3 were admitted with heart problems, but nothing critical. Their condition was stable." She paused. "Maybe it's just an unfortunate coincidence." "Possibly," Sanders agreed, not showing his doubts. Next was David Carter, a 29-year-old male nurse with an open face and nervous mannerisms. He had only been working at the hospital for 2 years, but had already established himself as a conscientious employee. "I've noticed a strange pattern," he said as soon as he sat down. "All 3 died during the night shift. All were about the same age. And all—" He lowered his voice. "All died when Samantha was on duty." Collins exchanged glances with Sanders. "Are you suspecting Miss Butler?" No, David waved his hands hastily. Samantha is an excellent nurse, very attentive to her patients. It's a strange coincidence, isn't it? Tell us more about that night, Sanders asked. I was working in the next wing, but I saw Samantha several times. She looked normal, calm, focused. Around 2:30, I met her in the hallway. She was carrying medication for Mr. Hill. Nothing unusual. After talking to the staff, the detectives went to the hospital archives to study the medical records. The small, stuffy room was filled with shelves of folders. Sanders took out 3 thick folders and laid them out on the table. James Ryder, 43 years old, he began to read. Admitted on August 20th with suspected arrhythmia. Worked as a manager at an insurance company. Wife, 2 children. Condition stabilized by the end of the first day. Planned discharge in 3 days. Collins studied the second folder. Anthony Brooks, 49 years old. Admitted on September 15th with chest pains after stress at work. High school teacher. Single. Cardiogram showed minor abnormalities. Nothing critical. And Robert Hill, a mechanic. 47 years old. Married. 3 children. Same picture. Stable condition. Favorable prognosis. Sanders closed the file. All 3 died between 2 and 5 in the morning. All on days when Samantha Butler was on duty. Look at the medication records. Collins pointed to the pages with the prescriptions. All 3 were given heart medication in the last hours of their lives. Digoxin, epinephrine, atropine, all standard medications for cardiac patients. But in large doses, any of them can be fatal, Sanders remarked. They returned to the ward to examine Robert Hill's room again. The room was a standard hospital room, a bed, a nightstand, a small cabinet, a chair for visitors. The deceased's personal belongings lay on the nightstand, a watch, a wallet, a set of keys. No signs of a struggle, Collins stated. Looks like he died in his sleep. Sanders walked over to the medical equipment near the bed. The 4th had been disconnected, but empty medicine vials lay in the medical tray on the cart. We need to send all of this in for analysis, he said, and request the autopsy results for Ryder and Brooks. At the end of the day, the detectives met with Dr. Freeman in his office. The head of the department looked concerned. I've gone over all the records again, he said. There is indeed a pattern. All 3 were relatively healthy men with minor heart problems. Their deaths are unexpected. Dr. Freeman, do you trust your staff? Collins asked. Absolutely. Samantha Butler has been working here for 8 years and has an impeccable reputation. David Carter is young, but very responsible. I can't believe that any of them. We're not accusing anyone of anything yet, Sanders reassured him. We're just exploring all possibilities. By the time the detectives left the hospital, it was already dark. In the car, Collins summed up the day. 3 deaths, all under similar circumstances. All victims are middle-aged men with mild heart problems. All died during the night shift when Samantha Butler was on duty. She closed her notebook. Too many coincidences. Tomorrow, we'll get the results of Hill's blood and tissue tests, Sanders said, starting the engine. And we'll review the CCTV footage. If these aren't natural deaths, we'll find out. Holy Cross Hospital was left behind, lit up by neon lights. In the cardiology department, it was business as usual. Nurses made their rounds, doctors checked on patients. But now a shadow of suspicion hung over it all. Samantha Butler finished her shift and headed home. She walked through the dark streets of Houston, thinking about the detectives' questions. 3 deaths in 2 months, all during her shifts. She understood how it looked from the outside. At home, in her small apartment, she sat down at the kitchen table and thought. Robert Hill was a good man. He told her about his children and showed her their photos. James Ryder worried about work, even in the hospital. Anthony Brooks read books and shared interesting facts with the staff. All 3 were ordinary people with ordinary lives. And all 3 died on her shift. Samantha closed her eyes, trying to push away the heavy thoughts. Tomorrow would be a new day, with new patients and new concerns. Life in the hospital goes on, no matter what. It had been only 4 days since Robert Hill's death when Detective Kurt Sanders received another call from Holy Cross Hospital. It was 8:30 a.m. on October 31st when his phone rang with an urgency that foreshadowed new problems. "Sanders here," he answered, already anticipating bad news. "Detective, this is Dr. Freeman from the hospital. We have another death. Leonard Gray, 45 years old. Same circumstances." Sanders closed his eyes and rubbed his nose. The 4th death. It couldn't be a coincidence anymore. Half an hour later, he met Collins at the hospital entrance. His partner looked as grim as he did. "What do we know?" Sanders asked as they headed for the elevators. Leonard Gray, 45, was admitted the day before yesterday with suspected heart attack. Turned out to be a false alarm, minor arrhythmia. Died today at 5:10 a.m. Collins leafed through her notes. "And here's what's interesting. Samantha Butler wasn't on duty last night." Sanders stopped in the middle of the corridor. "She wasn't?" "According to the schedule, she was off duty." Another nurse was on duty, Gloria Wilson. Dr. Freeman was already waiting for them in the cardiology department. The head of the department looked even more tired than last time. The deep wrinkles around his eyes had become more noticeable, and the gray in his hair had thickened. "Doctor, tell us about Mr. Gray," Collins asked. "Leonard was admitted on October 29th. He's a construction worker at a large building site. He complained of chest pain after physical exertion. We conducted a full examination. The cardiogram showed minor arrhythmia, but nothing critical." Freeman took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes wearily. "We prescribed light medication to stabilize his rhythm. We plan to discharge him this afternoon." "Who was on duty?" Sanders asked, even though he already knew the answer. "Gloria Wilson. She's been with us for 3 years, an experienced nurse. And David Carter from the junior staff. Leonard Gray's body lay in the same ward where Robert Hill had recently died. Room 412 seemed to be cursed. Detectives had examined the scene, but as in previous cases, no signs of violence had been found. "Where can we find Gloria Wilson?" Collins asked. "She finished her shift an hour ago, but I asked her to stay." "Gloria is very upset about what happened, Doctor," Freeman replied. Gloria Wilson was waiting for them in the doctor's lounge. She was a 41-year-old woman with short, curly hair and a nervous look in her eyes. She was wearing the same blue medical uniform as all the nurses in the ward, but it looked rumpled after a long night shift. "Miss Wilson, we are Detectives Sanders and Collins. We need to talk to you about the death of Leonard Gray." Gloria clasped her hands together and nodded. "I don't understand what happened." "Leonard was feeling fine when I checked on him at 2 in the morning. "Tell us about your shift in detail," Sanders asked, sitting down opposite her. "I started work at 11 o'clock in the evening. I did the standard rounds of all the patients in the ward. There were 12 of us in total. Leonard was in a good mood, even joking with me." Gloria spoke quickly, nervously twisting the edge of her uniform. "At 1 in the morning, I handed out medication. I gave him his prescribed drugs, metoprolol to stabilize his heart rate and a mild sedative. And then? At 2 o'clock, I did my scheduled rounds. All the patients were sleeping peacefully, including Leonard. His pulse was steady and his breathing was normal." Gloria paused, remembering. "The next check was at 4 in the morning. I went to each patient, took their blood pressure, and checked how they were feeling. Leonard was fine." "When did you discover he had died?" "At 10 minutes past 5 in the morning. I came to give him his morning medication and—" Gloria's voice faltered. "He wasn't responding. I checked his pulse, tried to wake him up. Nothing. I called the doctor on duty immediately." Collins wrote down every word. "Miss Wilson, did you know the previous patients who died in this ward? James Ryder, Anthony Brooks, Robert Hill?" "Of course. We all work together. We know each other." Gloria frowned. "Their deaths were strange too. They all came in with minor problems and then—" "Were you working the nights they died?" "No. Samantha Butler was on duty then. I was on duty that night." Gloria looked at the detectives with wide eyes. Do you think someone is killing them on purpose? After talking to Gloria, the detectives went to study her personal file. In Dr. Freeman's office, they carefully reviewed the documents. Gloria Wilson, 41 years old, has been working at the hospital for 3 years. Before that, she worked at a private clinic, Sanders read aloud. Good references, but... He pointed to one of the entries. 2 disciplinary actions for conflicts with patients. What kind of conflicts? Collins asked. Dr. Freeman looked uncomfortable. Nothing serious. Gloria can sometimes be harsh with difficult patients. A year ago, there was an incident with an elderly man who constantly complained and demanded special attention. Gloria lost her patience and was rude to him. And the second incident? 6 months ago. A middle-aged patient, very nervous, constantly calling the nurses for trivial matters. Gloria refused to go to him after midnight, saying he was faking it. Freeman sighed. We had a talk with her, and there have been no more incidents like that. The detectives exchanged glances. The picture was beginning to clear up, and it wasn't in Gloria Wilson's favor. Doctor, we have the results of Robert Hill's autopsy, Collins said, taking documents out of a folder. Elevated levels of digoxin were found in his blood. The dose was 3 times the normal amount. That's impossible. Freeman shook his head. We monitor the dosages of all medications very strictly. Who has access to the medications during the night shift? The nurse on duty and the doctor on duty. All medications are stored in a locked cabinet, but the senior nurses have the keys. Does Gloria Wilson have such a key? Yes, of course. She's a senior nurse. At the hospital pharmacy, they met with the manager, an elderly man named Arthur Bell. He showed them the medication logs for the previous night. Gloria Wilson received the standard set of medications for her patients, he said, running his finger down the records. Metoprolol and diazepam were dispensed to Leonard Gray in the dosages prescribed by the doctor. What about digoxin? Gray was not prescribed digoxin, but, Bell frowned, Gloria had access to an emergency supply of medication. For emergencies, did she take anything from the emergency supply that night? The emergency dispensing log is not filled out. If she took digoxin, she didn't record it properly. This was serious evidence against Gloria. The detectives returned to question her again. This time, Gloria looked even more nervous. She sat in the same doctor's office, but now her hands were shaking and her eyes darted around the room. Miss Wilson, we need to ask you a few more questions, Sanders began in a formal tone. Did you have access to the emergency supply of medication that night? Collins asked. Gloria nodded. Yes, all senior nurses have that access. Did you take digoxin from the emergency supply for Leonard Gray? No, Gloria exclaimed. He wasn't prescribed digoxin. Why would I take it? But you know where digoxin is kept? Of course I do. It's a standard heart medication. We use it all the time. Sanders showed her the autopsy results. A lethal concentration of digoxin was found in Mr. Gray's blood. How did it get there? Gloria's face turned pale. I don't know. I didn't give him digoxin. I swear. Miss Wilson, you have had disciplinary action taken against you for conflicts with patients. Tell us about that. Gloria lowered her head. Sometimes patients can be very difficult. They complain constantly, demand attention, and don't let you work. I just lose my patience. Was Leonard Gray a difficult patient? No, he was normal. Even pleasant Gloria looked up. I didn't kill him. I didn't kill anyone. After the interrogation, the detectives met with David Carter. The young nurse looked agitated. I saw Gloria acting nervous that night, he said. She was tense, irritable. She snapped at me several times for no reason. Anything else unusual? She spent a long time in the medicine cabinet. Usually it takes a minute, but she was in there for 20 minutes. I asked if everything was okay, but she said she was checking the medication inventory. Did you see her go into Leonard Gray's room? Yes, at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I noticed that she stayed there longer than usual. I thought the patient might be having some problems. David paused, then added, You know, Gloria sometimes complains about male patients. She says they're too demanding, too capricious, especially middle-aged men. This was another piece of evidence against Gloria Wilson. By the end of the day, the detectives had gathered enough evidence. Gloria had access to the lethal drug, was alone with the victim at the critical time, had a motive in the form of her dislike of demanding male patients, and exhibited suspicious behavior on the night of the death. "We need to check the records for previous deaths," Collins said. "Maybe Gloria is connected to them too." They studied the work schedules for the past 2 months. It turned out that Gloria had replaced her colleagues several times, working extra shifts. "Look," Sanders pointed to the records. "On the night of Anthony Brooks's death, Gloria worked until 11:30. Then Samantha Butler took over. But what if she didn't leave right away? And on the night James Ryder died, she was on vacation," Collins noted. "But the hospital is large. She could have slipped into the ward unnoticed." Late that evening, they received the results of Leonard Gray's blood tests. The concentration of digoxin was 4 times the lethal dose. "This couldn't have been an accident or a mistake," Sanders stated. "Someone deliberately administered a huge dose of the drug to him." The next morning, on November 1st, the detectives obtained an arrest warrant. They arrived at the hospital early in the morning, just as Gloria Wilson was starting her shift. She was arrested right in the doctor's office, in front of her colleagues. Gloria did not resist, but continued to maintain her innocence. "I didn't kill those people," she repeated as the detectives handcuffed her. "I'm a nurse. I help people. I don't kill them." Dr. Freeman watched the arrest with pain in his eyes. "I can't believe this. Gloria has worked here for 3 years." "The evidence speaks for itself," Sanders replied. "She had access, opportunity, and motive." As they led Gloria away from the hospital, the entire staff of the cardiology department gathered in the hallway. Samantha Butler stood against the wall, watching the scene with an impassive expression. "Finally, these murders will stop," said one of the orderlies. "It's hard to believe Gloria was capable of such a thing," whispered one of the nurses. At the police station, Gloria Wilson was formally charged with 4 counts of murder. She continued to deny her guilt, but the evidence was too strong. Access to drugs, time spent with the victims, a motive in the form of animosity toward male patients, suspicious behavior. "The case is closed," Sanders said, closing the folder with the investigation materials. Collins nodded, but deep down she still had doubts. Something about this case seemed too simple, too obvious. But the evidence didn't lie, and Gloria Wilson was the only one who fit all the criteria for a suspect. Holy Cross Hospital breathed a sigh of relief. The killer had been caught, and the staff could once again work in peace without fearing for the lives of their patients. 3 days after Gloria Wilson's arrest, Detective Kurt Sanders received an unexpected call from Dr. Freeman. It was early in the morning on November 4th when the head of the cardiology department called the police station. "Detective Sanders, I have a patient who wants to talk to you. He says he saw something important on the night Leonard Gray died." Sanders exchanged glances with Collins, who was reviewing the case files. "We'll be there in an hour." Charles Mitchell was in room 408, just a few feet away from the room where Leonard Gray had died. The 52-year-old man with a graying beard lay in a hospital bed, hooked up to a heart monitor. He had been admitted to the hospital with suspected heart attack, but like many other patients in the ward, his condition was not critical. "Mr. Mitchell, Dr. Freeman said you wanted to talk to us," Collins said, sitting down on a chair next to the bed. Charles nodded and tried to sit up higher on the pillows. "I'm a history teacher, so I'm used to noticing details. The night Leonard died, I couldn't sleep because of chest pain. I got up around 2 in the morning to get a drink of water." "What did you see?" Sanders asked. "I looked out into the hallway through the slightly open door of the ward. Nurse Gloria was on duty. I know her well. She took care of me from day one. But at 2:30 a.m., I saw another woman." Charles paused, gathering his thoughts. "It was Samantha Butler." The detectives exchanged glances. Are you sure it was Samantha Butler? Absolutely sure. She took care of me last week when I was first admitted with a heart attack. She's a very attentive nurse, kind. I remember her face well. What was she doing in the ward at 2:30 in the morning? She was walking down the hall toward Leonard Gray's room. She was holding a syringe. I thought he had taken a turn for the worse, and she had come to help. Gloria Charles frowned. But now that I know Leonard died that night, it seems strange to me that Samantha was there even though she wasn't on duty. Are you sure about the time? Yes. The clock in the hallway said 2:30. I remember because I thought it was late for the nurses to be working. Sanders felt something stir inside him. Mr. Mitchell, why didn't you mention this before? To be honest, I didn't think it was important. I thought Samantha was just helping a colleague. But when Gloria was arrested, I started to wonder. If Samantha was in the ward, maybe she saw something or knows something. After talking to Charles Mitchell, the detectives immediately went to check the information. In the hospital's Human Resources Department, they studied the work schedule for the night of Leonard Gray's death. Samantha Butler was indeed off duty that night, confirmed the HR employee. According to the schedule, she was only supposed to come to work the next day. But what if she came to the hospital for personal reasons? Collins suggested. Then she would have had to sign in at the gate. All employees are required to sign in when entering the building, even on their day off. They went down to security, where the guard on duty showed them the visitor log for that night. Samantha Butler did not enter the building on the night of October 30th to 31st, said the guard, running his finger down the entries. At least, not through the main entrance. Are there other entrances? There's a service entrance at the back of the building, but it should be locked after 11 p.m. However, the senior nurses have keys for emergencies. Sanders and Collins walked around the hospital building, examining all possible entrances. The service entrance was indeed located at the rear, in a relatively dark area, hidden from the main entrance. If Samantha wanted to enter the hospital unnoticed, this was the ideal route. We need to talk to Samantha, Sanders said. But first, let's review all the case files again. At the police station, they spread all the investigation files out on the table. 4 deaths, 4 middle-aged men, all with minor heart problems. James Ryder, Anthony Brooks, Robert Hill, Leonard Gray. Look at their photos, Collins said, laying out pictures of the deceased. All 4 have a certain similarity. Ages 43 to 49, medium build, dark hair, pleasant faces. It's as if they were selected according to certain criteria, agreed Sanders. What if they weren't random victims? What if the killer chose them because they reminded him of someone specific? They called Samantha Butler to the station for further questioning. When she arrived an hour later, she looked calm and collected, as always. A 34-year-old woman in a strict dark suit, her hair neatly styled, showing no signs of nervousness. Detectives, I hope you won't keep me long. I have the evening shift today, she said, sitting down opposite them in the interrogation room. Miss Butler, where were you on the night of October 30th to 31st? Sanders asked. At home. I had the night off. Who can confirm that? I live alone. I watched TV and went to bed early. Samantha shrugged. Just a quiet evening at home. Collins placed a photograph of Charles Mitchell on the table. Do you know this patient? Of course. Charles Mitchell. I took care of him last week. A nice man. A teacher. Mr. Mitchell claims he saw you at the hospital on the night of Leonard Gray's death, at 2:30 a.m. in the hallway of the cardiology ward. For the first time in the entire conversation, Samantha's expression changed. She tensed slightly, but quickly regained her composure. That's impossible. I was at home. Mr. Mitchell remembers you very well. He says you had a syringe in your hands and were heading toward Leonard Gray's room. He's mistaken. Perhaps he saw another nurse in the dim light. Sanders leaned forward. Samantha, senior nurses have keys to the hospital's service entrance. You could have entered unnoticed. Why would I do that? If I needed something from the hospital, I would have gone through the main entrance. Miss Butler, the autopsy results for all 4 victims show the same pattern. lethal doses of heart medication, digoxin, adrenaline, atropine. All of these drugs are available in the cardiology department. Samantha was silent, staring at the table. All four men have certain similarities, Collins continued. Age, appearance, physique. It's as if they were chosen according to certain criteria. I don't know what you're talking about. The silence in the room was deafening. Samantha sat motionless. Her hands were shaking. You killed 4 innocent men because they reminded you of someone else, Sanders said softly. Tell us what happened. Samantha closed her eyes. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. 10 years ago, I was studying at medical college. I worked in a bar in the evenings to pay for my studies. She opened her eyes but stared into the distance. It was the evening of December 5th. I was finishing my shift late at night. 4 men. They were regular customers, fun, outgoing. I thought they were good people. The detectives remained silent, letting her speak. They offered to drive me home. I agreed. Trusting them, Samantha's voice became even quieter. But they didn't take me home. They took me to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. There. All 4 of them. She couldn't finish the sentence, but the detectives understood. Did you go to the police? Colling asked cautiously. Of course I did. But they had influential connections. One worked at City Hall, another was the son of a well-known businessman. They hushed it up. They said there wasn't enough evidence to prove it was a consensual relationship. Tears streamed down Samantha's cheeks. I had to drop out of college and move to another city. My whole life fell apart. And you decided to take revenge? Not at first. I tried to move on, to forget. I finished my medical education in another city, moved to Houston, and got a job at a hospital. I thought I could help people, save lives. Samantha wiped her tears. But every time I saw men their age, their type, I remembered that night. Anger grew inside me like cancer. When did you decide to start killing? 2 months ago. James Ryder was admitted to our ward. He looked so much like one of them, the one who was in charge, who held me while the others... She didn't finish. I realized I couldn't take it anymore. That they had to pay. But these weren't the men who hurt you. I know, Samantha exclaimed. But they were exactly the same. Same age, same appearance, same smug smiles. Every time I cared for them, I saw the faces of those 4 Sanders leaned forward. Tell us how you did it. Samantha took a deep breath, as if letting go of a heavy burden. I had keys to the hospital. I knew the duty roster. I knew where the medicines were kept. On the night of James Ryder's death, I entered the hospital through the service entrance at 3 a.m. Gloria was sleeping in the break room, as she often did during night shifts. I went to Ryder's room and injected a lethal dose of digoxin into his IV. And the others? Anthony Brooks, Robert Hill, same pattern. Samantha looked at the detectives. Leonard Gray was different. Gloria was on duty, not me. But he reminded me so much of one of the rapists that I couldn't wait for the next opportunity. Weren't you afraid Gloria would be accused of murder? I thought everyone would write it off as natural causes. After all, they all had heart problems. Samantha lowered her head. I didn't want anyone to get hurt because of me. Gloria is a good nurse. The room fell silent. The detectives digested what they had heard. Samantha's story was tragic, but it did not justify the murder of 4 innocent people. Miss Butler, you understand that you are confessing to 4 first-degree murders? Sanders said. Yes, I do. Samantha sat up straight in her chair. I don't regret what I did. Those men paid for crimes that went unpunished. Their families may be suffering, but I suffered for 10 years. They were innocent people with families, dreams, plans of their own. Wasn't I innocent 10 years ago? Didn't I have plans and dreams? Samantha's voice became firm. The justice system failed me. I took justice into my own hands. Collins shook her head. That's not justice, Samantha. That's revenge, and on completely different people. Call it what you want. An hour later, Samantha Butler was officially arrested on 4 counts of first-degree murder. Gloria Wilson was released with an apology. When the news of the real killer reached the hospital, the staff of the cardiology department was in shock. Samantha had worked with them for 8 years and was one of the most respected nurses. No one suspected the pain she had been carrying inside her all these years. I should have noticed something, Dr. Freeman told the detectives. Some signs, changes in behavior. She helped people during the day and killed them at night. Trauma can remain hidden for a long time, Collins replied. Samantha learned to function, to work, to live a normal life, but inside she was consumed by hatred. David Carter, a young male nurse, was particularly affected by the revelation. Samantha taught me how to work with patients. She said you have to be compassionate, help people in their time of need. He shook his head. How could she say that, knowing she was killing innocent people? The human psyche is complex, Sanders explained. Trauma can split a person's personality. During the day, she was a caring nurse, and at night, she was a vengeful killer. During the course of the investigation, detectives tried to find the 4 men who raped Samantha 10 years ago, but the trail went cold. One of them died in a car accident 3 years ago, another moved to another state and disappeared, and the whereabouts of the other 2 could not be determined. Perhaps if justice had been served back then, 4 innocent people would be alive today, Collins mused, as she closed the last folder containing the case files. Sanders nodded. The system sometimes fails people. But that doesn't give anyone the right to take the law into their own hands. Samantha Butler was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. During the trial, she maintained her dignity and showed no remorse for her actions. I understand that I will be punished for my actions, she said in her final statement. But I want everyone to know that there are victims whose voices go unheard, whose abusers go unpunished. I was one of those victims. The judge handed down the sentence, but noted that although the circumstances of the case evoked sympathy for the defendant, the murder of innocent people could not be justified by any motives. Holy Cross Hospital gradually returned to normal life. The cardiology department continued to admit patients, save lives, and fight disease. But Samantha Butler's story forever changed the atmosphere at the hospital. Dr. Freeman introduced new safety rules, additional control over medications, mandatory registration of all employees when entering the building after hours, and psychological support for staff. We must care not only for our patients, but also for those who treat them, he said at meetings. Trauma can lie dormant for years and then explode in the most unexpected ways. Gloria Wilson returned to work, but she struggled to recover from the false accusation. Her colleagues supported her, understanding that she was a victim of circumstances. Charles Mitchell, whose testimony helped solve the crime, was discharged from the hospital a week later. He often thought that if he had remained silent, an innocent woman could have spent her entire life in prison. Sometimes the truth is painful, but silence can be even more destructive, he told his students, sharing this story as a lesson on the importance of civic responsibility. Detectives Sanders and Collins continued to reflect on the case for a long time. It raised profound questions about justice, revenge, and human nature. What if the system hadn't failed Samantha 10 years ago? Collins asked. What if those men had been punished? We'll never know, Sanders replied. But one thing is certain. Revenge only breeds more suffering. 4 families lost fathers and husbands because of a crime they did not commit. The Samantha Butler case became one of the most difficult of their careers, not in terms of the investigation, but from a moral standpoint. They caught the killer, but they couldn't help but sympathize with the motives that led her to commit the crime. Holy Cross Hospital continued to operate, saving lives and giving hope. But the story of the killer nurse was a reminder that even the most ordinary people can carry deep trauma that can lead to tragic consequences. In her small prison cell, Samantha Butler spent her days in reflection. She did not regret what she had done, but sometimes she thought about the families of her victims. 4 women were left widowed, children orphaned. But in her heart, she was still the 24-year-old girl who had been raped on a cold December night 10 years ago. Justice had been served, but the pain remained. And the question of whether such deep wounds could ever truly be healed remained unanswered.